Welcome back. Chinese media outlet Global Times, that is also the mouthpiece of the ruling CCP, has published an article praising India's strategic confidence and proactive approach in shaping a distinct Bharat narrative. The article is an opinion piece, hails India's strides in economic, social governance and foreign policy under Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It also states that earlier the Indian perspective used to be focused on Beijing measures to reduce trade imbalance, but under Modi government, they focus on their export potential as well. Notably, this article comes at a time when India-China ties have been under strain and possibly some of the worst strains they've ever seen since the wars, especially after the Galwan clashes in 2020. Let's break down a few key statements that this piece makes. First up, on the Bharat narrative, on how overall governance has improved in India. So it goes on to say that India has highlighted Indian feature of democratic politics, that this reflects India's ambition to escape its historical colonial past. India now is more proactive and confident in creating, quote, this Bharat narrative, strong narrative in terms of development, politics, economics and culture. India now is acting as a world mentor politically and culturally. This is very similar to what the Indian government says about its own policy and vision. There was also rare praise from China on India's foreign policy, another feature of the Modi 2.0 government. Zhang, who's the author of the article, says India has shifted from multi-balancing to multi-alignment in 10 years, rapidly transforming towards becoming a pole in a multipolar world. Such speed, it says, is rarely seen in the history of international relationships. So, a testament of how quickly India has turned around in its image and its focus on international policy. India is now a major power in the global arena. It says India has become a new geopolitical factor that many need to consider. Now, many people would have been stunned by this glorious praise that has come from none other than the Chinese government's mouthpiece. So what is really going on? Is China now coming around to India's might and wanting better relations? We'll take that to our guests. Siddharth Yadav of the BJP continues with us. I'm also joined by Ashok Sajjanhar, Indian diplomat, and Dr. Andrew K.P. Leung, who is a China strategist based in Hong Kong. Dr. Andrew, let me begin with you. I want to understand, what do you make of this rare praise from the Chinese mouthpiece?
I think that Beijing wants to promote the idea of a multipolar world with greater force. In the light of the American-led, so-called American-led pushback against China, based on this, the so-called American-led liberal order, sort of putting a lot of emphasis on confrontation, on dividing the world into camps. What China now wants is a more peaceful environment, enabling all countries to develop. And it sees that India is beginning to play a leading role, exemplified by India's independent position vis-a-vis the war on Ukraine and other matters, including, for example, what's happening in Gaza. And I think that this all chimes what China is trying to do in order to create a multipolar world,
yes,
but not based so much on confrontation, but based on harmony in spite of differences.
A more multipolar world, definitely something that China aims for, and not really, a West versus others. But it's not to say, Dr. Andrew, that China loves an independent India or a strong India either. In Asia, they are also KG rivals. Is China wanting better relationships with India? Is this possibly also happening because they sense they have to deal with Narendra Modi for another 5 years? So it's almost like wanting to send an olive branch or temper down temperatures. Do you see some of that happening as well?
First of all, naturally, it's Modi's second, the new term is almost a shoe-in. So it's a high time for China to send out an olive branch, as it were, to promote better relations. But what is more important, as I was saying, is China seeing the world is changing with the global South. being able to exert its own sovereignty, and then they are less tied to the former Western-dominated world order, and
But it
that's
is still
also
pretty
this.
inimical to India. I mean, as far as India's territorial integrity is concerned, those issues don't go away just because of a multipolar world.
As I said, a multipolar world doesn't mean that there are no differences. As I said, China's ancient philosophy always plies on you can have a cooperative relationship in spite of differences. That's what I said.
Okay,
That there are
okay.
always differences between countries.
Okay, is this a shift in the mood? I want to bring in another expert, the ex-diplomat also, Ashok Sajjanhar. Before I open this up for the politicians or the political representatives, Mr. Sajjanhar, how do you look at it? How should India look at it? This is happening barely 5 months before the next elections, and after a 3-year period of intense, strain over India-China relationship.
No, you're very right, Shivani. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. This is I will just take note of what has come in Global Times. Global Times, you're very right when you said that it's a mouthpiece of the Communist Party of China. But I would like to see that translated, whatever has been mentioned in this article, I would like to see that translated in official policy. And you are very right when you said that, the real problem between India and China is the problem on the line of actual control. We've been seeing what happened, meaning I can, of course, go to 2020, Galwan, 2017, Doklam, 2014, when Xi Jinping was in town, his first visit after Prime Minister Modi came, and also in 2013, when the Chinese Prime Minister was here. But, this sort of incursions and coming inside India, that has been continuing. And India has made it very clear to China that business as usual cannot be restored unless we have peace and tranquility at the border.
So
and
is this an attempt by the Chinese to maybe say, okay, let's get on and maybe paper over some of those cracks?
I would like that to come from the Foreign Minister of China, Mr. Wang Yi, meaning he was here, Li Qiang was here, the Prime Minister of China was here for the G20 summit in September. I did not see any change in whatever their pronouncements were. So rather than going, taking a heart from what the Global Times has said, and, mind you, this Global Times is basically in English. It is for the external audiences. It's not for the internal audiences of China, because that paper is published in Chinese. And I don't really know whether this article has been translated into Chinese and also...
So could it be a message to the West then, because it is happening in English in the Global Times, that, because India recently has also, the foreign minister has, gone on this much publicized trip to Russia. We've had some difference of opinion with US and Canada. We've seen them behaving in cahoots with each other on Khalistani issue. And China is also sending out a feeler to the West that, more and more countries, we applaud countries that are not bowing down to the West.
Let me put it this way, Shivani. You mentioned about China, Canada and the United States. I think those whole issue of this Khalistani thing, Hardeep Singh Nijjar and Pannu in the United States, I think these are mere ripples. These are mere hiccups as far as the overall totality of relations between India and the United States are concerned. They are going to have no impact whatsoever in the medium or the long term in terms of the development of our relations. They are strong. They are on a very strong footing. We have we have identified the United States as India's most consequential partner, strategic partner, and these things are not going to change. Now, as far as the question, the point that you have made, sending out a message to the world, I think the world is also got wise to what China says, because they also realize that there is a huge difference between what China says
and what China does. And I think you did say that you would like to see this instead through their actions and not so much through an opinion piece in Global Times. I want to go across to Anthony now. Matthew, nice to see you again. This is a glowing piece of praise on India's foreign policy, growing stature in the world by none other than a rival, if not an enemy, in China. This comes as an endorsement, again, of another country on India's foreign policy and others, and even the transformation of India economically. How does the opposition look at this? Because you've been hammering Narendra Modi's foreign policy quite a bit over the last 5 years.
Shivani, thanks for taking me in the show again, and good to see you again. Now, we will continue to hammer Narendra Modi on his foreign policies for the simple reason that eases the price for the life of 20 soldiers in Galwan in 2020, then eases the price of 2,000 square kilometer of aggression of our land, eases the price of being a trade partner who supplies 70% of the electronics into India, barring a few infrastructure contractual bans and a few app bans, and almost 90% of the API pharmaceutical ingredients coming from China. Is this the price, which China is paying for Prime Minister Modi? And also, you don't like it, but the Chung Chang link connection of Adani, who siphoned off a lot of funds, who's alleged to be siphoned off a lot of funds, with from the government of India. There is a director of revenue intelligence case, DRI case in 2014 on this one. So eases the price for the foreign policies. Now look into Bhutan, look into Maldives, look into Sri Lanka. The Chinese aggression has completely captured our neighborhood. Is this a foreign policy success or is this a foreign policy failure? And then when we have sacrificed 20 of our soldiers, we have participated with the Russians and the Chinese troops for joint military exercises. So is this the price which we are paying for the compromises which we have made?
Are you suggesting that China has been bought? I doubt that is going to be possible.
China is not being bought, so more than India. Let me ask you a few questions. When we had this issue in 2020, when we knew that 70% of our mobiles and electronic goods are getting, what have we done as a government to get the local production up? What have we done for the API, the pharmaceutical ingredients production up? The entire toys comes from China.
Actually, I was reading an article where the export of toys has increased and import has come down by quite a bit. On mobile manufacturing, of course, India has made strides. So I get where you're going with this, but actually, interestingly and ironically, in this article, it acknowledges India's efforts in reducing that trade deficit you're talking about and switching the strategy of not just, looking at China to do something, but banking on your own capabilities. Let me quickly get in Siddharth Yadav as well. Siddharth, you should always be a little wary when your rival or enemy praises you so profusely. Something seems amiss or something seems fishy here. Mr. Yadav, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, am I audible now,
Yeah,
Shivani?
go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Shivani, and one has to be very cautious. But rather, I think we are on a different line, and that line is that we really don't care. We don't care what China is saying because we know that they always and they can have an agenda. What India is doing, the West already knows, rather the entire world already knows. If China wants to please us, they're most welcome. They can put it in their mouthpiece, and if they would, it's just a matter of time that they would have to, say out the truth of the India success story. If they are doing that, we are very cautious. Nobody is overexcited. Nobody is, taking that as a praise because we don't want any certification or validation from China. That is point number one. Point number two, I think where India has progressed today and where we are going further, a lot of such issues are already being addressed. What's written in the article, it's not just that it's written in the article, that is why it's true. The entire world now knows that in this multipolar world, India is coming out as a pole. And, there are very profound examples for that. The examples are for the Indian currency. Now, Russia and Sri Lanka are settling their trade in rupee. What India has played a role in the entire Ukraine war. That has come out to be a very strong thing. I think our ties with all countries are also strengthening, and the India's position globally has strengthened. And the China has to, worry about that. And why not would they? And why would they not comment about it? Their entire Belt and Road Initiative is, going down the drain because of what India is doing, and India is now building their own, alternative global mechanisms for such things, and that is why it's for them.
What do you make of the Congress attack on the government today? That this is coming from a country against whom we've lost 20 of our bravehearts in the recent Galwan clash. And they have particularly accused the Prime Minister of being soft on China, where the Congress obviously alleges that they latched on to some part of our land in the recent clashes, while the Prime Minister said कि कोई घर में नहीं घुसा है. So, according to the Congress, he gave a clean chit to the Chinese.
Shivani, very true. We have lost a lot to China. We have lost the XI chain. We have lost our permanent seat in the UN. We have lost over the years a lot of things. But I think in this decade, the losses are, overpowered than the gains. They are overpowered when the Prime Minister comes out and says "Make in Bharat." I think that initiative is the one initiative which worries China. Now, my friend was quoting about the toys production, about mobile phones. He should really go out and check the data before 2014. India is actually producing more and forget toys and mobile phones in defense production. We were going to rely on China for defense production, which is not the case now. We are, more than 1 lakh crores of defense production we are doing ourselves.
Okay.
It's increasing multi-fold for mobile phones. It's the highest ever that India has ever seen. And same is the case for toys. All the initiatives that the government is taking and the people are participating in, all such initiatives are the ones which are going to dent China's monopoly.
Matthew wants to come in. Matthew, along with what you want to say, I do want to ask you, generally these are seen as signs by governments around who have to deal with you, by other countries, that they see the political wins. And possibly what this praise of Narendra Modi and his policies is telling is that in China too, they believe that Narendra Modi is coming back.
It's not because of that, because of the large consumption which we are, the consumer market which we are for the Chinese products. They have to keep, us in good humor. We understand that. Now look into what Siddharth has said, that in terms of the production part of it. A large part of our coal production and our energy production, the manufacturing, the components, the machines comes from China.
Sure.
And the large investor in the largest infrastructure company is also a Chinese company. The major contractor is PMC Projects, which is a Chinese company owned by Cheng Changlung. So where are we strategically going ahead also in terms of this one? Okay. We are getting exposed ourselves, strategically in main areas. And what are we doing about with the Chinese aggression in Sri Lanka, in the port, where there's a Chinese submarine watching the entire activities there. And Maldives, the president are completely kind of, asking the Indian troops to withdraw. So where is the diplomatic or the foreign policy?
Maneuvering. Okay. Have we lost a little bit of ground in the maneuvering with China around us?
Bhutan is having Chinese aggression. Thailand and Taiwan is now giving Chinese people free visas for entry as well as investments. Where are we? Because we're surrounded with Chinese investments across.
Okay, I get the point you're making. I want to give Andrew the final word. Andrew, our diplomat on the show, said that we can't really trust what, Global Times says. Who is this really for? Is it for global consumption or internal consumption, this article? And secondly, wouldn't China have to do a little bit more to convince India it wants stress-free, violence-free relationship?
First of all, the Global Times has been highly regarded as anything that can be deviating from China's foreign policy. It always stays ahead of what China is going to do, and it follows the policy line very, very closely, in spite of the fact that it's published in English. And of course, there are Chinese versions as well on the mainland. Now, so that's taking apart from that. I think what China is focusing is on commonalities between China and India, in spite of differences. And I repeat, there are differences.
Okay, and some of those differences are really not going anywhere. Those are differences that have stayed over a period of time. I've run out of time. How do the commonalities work in our favor? Can we really overcome the differences is the question that comes to mind. But we leave you with that. My colleague Rahul Shivshankar is joining you.